Welcome back, Illumineers. Thank you for joining us tonight. We continue our set review of Rise of the Floodborn. Tonight we're going to go over Ruby, and Ruby has some very interesting and powerful cards. Blue here, unfortunately, is not one of them. Um, it's nice to see the Jungle Book in this set, and we're going to see one of my favorite characters here shortly. But Blue is basically a draft card. Speaking of draft card, Buon, um, our entrepreneur, selling food on his boat in Raya the Last Dragon, again, also is a falls under the draft and sealed category. Not really constructed worthy, unless you just want to build a Raya the Last Dragon deck. Sadly, here's another one. The Card Soldiers, 5/5 for 5 with 2 lore. There's a number of these cards within set 1 and set 2 that average this stat line and 2 lore. Unfortunately, there are better cards to play at this cost, but, again, if you're looking for something fun, you could definitely try to put together an Alice in Wonderland deck. Alright, now we get to at least some slightly stronger cards. Our first legendary in Ruby is Donald Duck Not Again, 5 cost inkable 1/5 with 1 lore, evasive. And this character has +1 lore for each 1 damage on him. So the more he gets hit, the more he can quest for. So he is evasive. So you can basically run him into whatever character you want and deal him damage. But there are more efficient ways of doing the cool stuff. There's a song that you can play here that we'll go over here shortly in this set that allows you to damage one of your put 2 damage on one of your characters and do 2 damage to one of your opponent's characters, which immediately puts Donald at 3 lore. Now, exactly where he fits within Ruby, I don't know yet. I've not seen any decks that have used him. I have seen him used in Limited, and boy, is that a pain to have to deal with him when you're having to just barely poke him one at a time. Next up is Felicia, Always Hungry. Bye, Felicia. 1 cost, inkable 3/1 with Reckless. So there are some Ruby decks that have already started replacing their 1-drops with this Felicia. Simply because you can play her on 1, particularly if you go second, and your opponent can't quest with their 1-drop, and if they play a 2-drop, particularly our little friend Simba, Protective Cub, Simba's going to get eaten immediately. So this is definitely a power-up. Obviously, you're not questing with this character, but the point is it's basically a 1 cost, 3 damage attacker. Next up is Fidget, Radigan's Henchman. So this, it has the same stat line as the Emerald Peter Pan from set 1. 3/2 evasive for 3 inkable, 1 lore and evasive. Not really much to see here. He's fine. If you wanted to build a full-on evasive deck and you wanted to stuff as many evasives in your deck as you wanted, you could definitely consider him. But the 2 willpower is a liability, especially with steel being currently as good as it is. So I would probably avoid this for anything except limited play. Next up is Honest John. Well, not that honest. A 3 cost uninkable 2/3 1 lore. When you play a Floodborn character, each opponent loses a lore. Um, so again, this is a fine rare. Um, not fond of the not inkable, but I think most of these cards that have these effects are not inkable. Oh, excuse me. And this ability is only going to be as good as the number of Floodborn that you have in your deck. As he stands down, um, other than Aladdin, that's already a mainstay in Ruby, um, there are a couple of new characters that can be that are Floodborn that they're playing. So it could potentially make your opponent lose 1, 2, 3 lore in a game. Personally, I would stick. If I were going to stick with anything, I would stick with the 3-drop Aladdin into the shift into the 5-drop. Um, definitely could be something in the future for this card. Speaking of shifts, so we have Lady Tremaine, Imperious Queen, 6 costs, uninkable, 3/4, 2 lore, shift of 4. There's a 2 coster here we'll go over in a minute. Villain Queen. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and banishes one of their characters. Super rare. So this is starting to be run as a 4 of in the Ruby control decks. They're not running any smaller copy of Lady Tremaine. They're just playing her for 6. The whole point is you can go be prepared, clear the board, pass turn. Your opponent, readies, draws a card, plays a card, or inks a card, plays something big, passes it back to you. And then on your next turn, you immediately play Lady Tremaine and destroy that character because they have to banish it. It's the only one on the board for them. So you're going to be seeing a lot of this card. Statistics are not great here, but it is, if you can plan out the when you play her for removal, she works just like a Dragonfire. The best bet is if they drop a character with Ward, this gets around Ward. So No Touchy is going to get, unfortunately, banished. Look for this card at a table near you. Here is the 2-drop character. This is a slightly worse version of the Aladdin that we're seeing from set 1. She does at least cost 2, where Aladdin costs 3. And she's not inkable, where Aladdin is inkable. But the problem here is each opponent with more lore than you loses 1 lore, while Aladdin does it to everybody, all your opponents. So again, not that great. And not inkable is kind of meh. Lumiere. Love Beauty and the Beast and references. Kind of expected to see him and Ruby. Very high statted with 2 lore. Probably should have had 3 lore for a vanilla in this color. Again, we'll reserve him for limited, or if you just want to build a fun Beauty and the Beast deck. All right. Let me make sure I didn't overclick. Okay. Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer. Now, this little 3-cost evasive character is definitely going to see some play. So she's inkable, 1/3. Stats are not terrible, but they're nothing to write home about. You're playing her for the evasive portion and the 2 lore. So now, in Ruby, you have a 3 cost evasive that quests for 2, a 4 cost evasive that quests for 2, a 5 cost that quests for 2, and a 6 cost that quests for 2. All at um, common or uncommon. Now that is a huge. I mean that's big, especially even for a budget deck. And then you also pair that with Emerald. Um, you have the 4 cost Tinkerbell that's evasive. Quest for 2 gives another character evasive. You have Ray, which we talked about in the last episode. 5 cost Inkable 3/3. Quest for 3 lore. So you have a ton of evasives. Um, that are gaining you 2 to 3 lore each in this color pairing. So even at a budget level, I would expect to see this card um, um, as we move into the Rise of Floodborn meta. All right, the Wide-Eyed Diver. This was a very early preview card. It's a very cheap shift at 2. Does have evasive. 2/3 inkable, 1 base lore. But if you want to bump this up to 3 lore, you have to play 2 actions in a turn. At least 2 actions in a turn. I'm not overly sold that this card is functional, at least currently. You would have to play multiple songs for free to be able to quest for 3 with this mini. And that means you have exerted your other characters to play for the songs. So it's going to really depend on how much value you've gotten out of those songs, because now you put your entire board at risk, except for Minnie here because she's evasive. Is there a deck here? Too early to tell. I don't think there's probably enough currently. Long-term viability, definitely worth a longer look down the road. And now we have our common mini. She does have proper stats to take out Simba. But if you're looking for something to take out Simba, I would stick with Felicia personally. Alright, Mother Gothel, Withered and Wicked. 3/4 for 2 lore. I mean, for 2 ink and inkable is really good. 1 lore is alright. This character interplay with 3 damage. Okay, so she's basically a 3/1 unless you have a way to heal her. Now, funny story, the 4-drop Rapunzel heals the 3 damage and draws the 3 cards off of her, which is pretty synergistic and interesting. The stats are very interesting. But I don't know if I want a character entering play with 3 damage on it unless I immediately have a way to remove that 3 damage from it. So for now, I think I'll pass. Mulan, Soldier in Training. So she's costs 1 more and is +1 strength, but otherwise she is basically the same as Rafiki. Ruby and Amethyst have the most rush characters in the game. And you do want to play a lot of board control with those colors. So I understand wanting a card like this, excuse me, in your deck. But honestly, I don't really think, I think force too much for this effect when you can go 5 for Maui, and take out a slightly larger character at 6. 5 costs for 6/5 with Rush and Reckless. So this to me falls under a limited card. Namari Nemesis. 4 cost unequal, 3/3, 1 lore, storyboard villain princess. So this is one of the first ones that have both the villain and the princess trait. Exert, banish this character, banish chosen character. So if there becomes a deck in the environment that wants to hold their certain characters back and not quest with them, and you're not in Amethyst and you want a way to get rid of them, this Namari may be useful. Now the problem with all that is Dragonfire is 5 and does the same thing. And both of these can't be used if the character has a ward. So you're in the same boat. Do you want a character that you can use this with, and the other times gain a lore? Sure, that could definitely be a puzzle piece there. But right now I'm not very high on this super rare currently. Now, this is a Rush character that I am all about. Queen of Hearts, Impulsive Ruler, 2 cost inkable, 2/2, 1 lore, storybound villain queen with Rush. So this is the sweet spot. There have been Ruby decks that have been cutting their other 1-drops in those slots for Felicia, but also for Queen of Hearts. So if you're going first, you can play an ink and pass. Or if you're going second, you can play an ink and pass and let your opponent quest with a character, and they don't see anything in play, so they don't play out their Simba. They're like, oh, I'll play another two casted character. My Lilo's fine. You can immediately draw, play your ink, and then play Queen of Hearts and bash into Lilo or bash into Maleficent biding her time and take them out, and your opponent is caught flat-footed. They're like, oh crap. Also, this character is going to be important for the shift target that we're going to talk about next. Queen of Hearts, Sensing Weakness. 5 cost inkable, 4/3. Floodborn Villain Queen, quest for 1, shift for 2, which is insane value here. Let the game begin. Whenever one of your characters challenges another character, you may draw a card. Ruby has been one of the colors that has lacked card draw from set 1. Our goal in Ruby, for the most part, is when we play characters, we want to turn our characters are going to be challenging your opponent's characters. We want to. This is sort of the number one color for doing that, right? And Steel being one of the others. Steel can play Fire the Cannons and Smash and some of those other cards to get rid of things, but they can also bash in. They want to challenge. This fits a need both for card draw in your deck and for what you want to do naturally anyway. Challenge your opponent's characters. I still believe that there is a Ruby Steel board control deck that is primarily characters that you play and involves challenging. Um, and you'll start. I think you'll start to see that in this set between cards like the Queen of Hearts series here, um, as well as um, a friend of mine that you see in the background here, that I think is quite powerful in the correct shell. But yeah, this is a super cheap shift cost. You've got the tutu that we just talked about. They can take out their Lilos, and if your opponent doesn't challenge and get rid of the tutu, because they think, oh, it's nothing, you can literally shift into this character the next turn for two, and challenge in and draw a card, and so you've replaced some of that, and you may have KO'd two characters. Ah, right again. Very large mouse. um, haven't seen a lot of talk about this character. 3/3 for 5 and 2 lore is understated for the stat line and cost. It's not inkable, which is not great. When you play this character, exert chosen opposing character with um, 3 cost or less. Choose one of your characters and ready them. They can't quest for the rest of the turn. So he pulls double duty is he exerts a character your opponent controls that's weak um, to be able to remove them from play. Our idea here is we're exerting your character and then readying one of ours so that we can challenge yours and get it off the board. Um, I think this card is better than what it is, but um, I think there are too many mitigating factors. Um, this is sort of this is kind of restrictive um, uh, as far as strength wise. The You can ready any of your characters, so that doesn't really matter. Um, is this worth 5 resources to play this? I've not seen a list with one so far. I have not played personally with this card, um, but right now I'm underwhelmed by what it wants to do. It's very neat, but um, there's too many ifs. Raya Headstrong. Um, so there's a cycle of these cards. Whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. She can't quest for the rest of the turn. Um, this is this type of effect is actually really good because you can either challenge multiple characters in a turn. Um, in theory, you could challenge 3/1/1s in a single turn, and you that were exhausted, and you get to banish all 3 of them at the cost of the one riot. Now, 3 for 1s are really strong. Um, More than likely, however, um, you're going to get to challenge one of your opponent's characters. Um, if you if 2 is enough strength to take out their willpower, then you'll ready this character and it will sit there for the rest of the turn, which is fine. Um, Personally, I see this only being usable right now at limited, just because of the current cost and stat line. So this is a super rare Leader of Heart, 6 cost inkable 5/3 shift of 4, 2 lore. Whenever this character challenges a damaged character, she takes no damage from the challenge. So if any of you played Magic, this a damaged character, basically she has first strike against a damaged character. Um, which I think is a neat ability. Um, but a 5/3 is, to me, a bad stat line. Um, Simply because of the removal in the format. Um, we had World's Greatest Criminal Mind that banishes her. You've got Smash that hits this. Um, I don't see a spot for this based on what we're currently doing. And unfortunately, just like the Scar from set one, same stat lines, difference, beautiful piece of art here. Um, but for me, not constructed playable. Scar, vicious cheater. This legendary is very strong. 7 cost, uninkable, 6/5 with rush and 2 lore. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. He can't quest for the rest of the turn. So Scar lets you take out multiple smaller characters on the same turn. Um, and basically out of nowhere because of the rush trait. So even if you don't get to use his 2 lore, if you do get to challenge and banish multiple characters in a turn, you have got your money's worth. Now, there's an upcoming card on this list that makes this Scar even better. Shere Khan, Menacing Predator. A 3-costed inkable 3/3 with 1 lore. Whenever one of your characters challenges another character, gain 1 lore. So if there is going to be a ruby deck paired with another color that is going to play a character based deck that challenges characters, um, as its method of board control, this card will be an instrumental piece of it. Now, I know there's been a lot of players. Um, this card hadn't been showing up in lists online. I have been playing a deck in set one that was basically without this card. But the deck was using the Steel Taka, the 6 cost 5/5 that when he banishes a character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore. And you had him and you had the Shift Aladdin. Now you add Shere Khan to that deck in the 3 spot. You add the Queen of Hearts in the with Rush for the 2 spot and the 5 cost that shifts onto her. Now you have a deck that's gaining lore every time that you challenge a character, and you're drawing cards every time you challenge a character. So not only are you taking your opponent's board position away, you are gaining lore and putting yourself, either you're coming from behind in that game and leaving your opponent's board position in a terrible spot, or your opponent's trying to catch up and so he's questing with his characters, and now you're taking their characters out and still gaining lore, meaning that your opponent is falling farther and farther behind. Now, control decks with very few characters are going to be the bane of this. but aggro and even mid-range decks are going to have characters they've had to quest with. And so I think in the correct environment, this would be a very powerful deck. And I've seen it work, at least in my local meta. We will see what others come up with and how the rest of the large events um, follows. But I definitely think it's a player. This is a cute Tigger, 3/3 for 3, 1 lower. When you play an action, he gets bigger. Um, so basically, lets you play a card, make Tigger bigger, and then you can challenge and banish, whatever's exerted. Um, I think this falls more in a role in a limited deck currently rather than a constructed deck, because most of the actions that we want to play um, are removal, um, and the 3 spot is kind of full in Ruby right now. So, Tuk Tuk Wrecking Ball. um, this is a slightly worse, cheaper version of Maui. The biggest drawback here is if Tuk Tuk was a 5/4 instead of a 4/5, um, it could take out more. Um, Granted, unlike Maui, this is telegraphed, so it makes your opponent think about what I'm going to quest with or what I'm going to challenge with next turn. Um, and as long as Maui's available, I don't see Tuk Tuk playable. Into the songs. Now we have Go the Distance. This is an inkable song that readies a damaged character of yours. They can't quest for the rest of the turn, but the net that you get with this is you get to draw a card. So I was completely wrong about Fan the Flames from set one. Um, uh, LeFou Instigator is a better card because it's a character that does the action and it leaves you with an extra body. Um, this being a song means that yes, it is slightly more playable and the draw card is very useful. Um, I just don't see where this fits in any current decks outside of limited. Um, I would like to see a deck builder prove me wrong, like I did with the first set. But as of right now, it's going to sit on the outside. Teeth and Ambition. So this is the song that I spoke about earlier that combos with Donald Not Again. Um, this is a very cheap song. Cost 2. It is inkable. You deal 2 damage to a character of yours, and then you get to deal 2 damage to another chosen character. Yes, you can damage another one of your own characters if you want to. So if you have 2 Donalds out, you can hit them both for 2, and then you can quest for 6 on that turn. But typically, you want to deal 2 to your own, and then deal two to one of theirs to get rid of them. Um, there isn't a ton of synergy with this card right now, but it does give um, uh, Ruby a cheap way of removing some characters from play in the early game. So you could play with your 1 cost 1/3s, which we had dubbed the Snowman because Olaf was the first one spoiled, and you could put 2 damage on your 1/3 and then shoot one of your opponent's characters for 2, get them off the board, and you still have your character. Um, this has grown in popularity quite quickly and has actually pushed the price up on this card substantially, um, particularly with the as players wait to the December 1st big box store release. I kind of expect this to continue to be very playable in Ruby, no matter what other ink color you're using. The most diabolical scheme. I don't pull a Vincent Van Price voice off nearly at his level, but it had to be done. 3 cost non-inkable song. Banish chosen villain of yours to banish chosen character. Um, so this is what we call card disadvantage. You're playing a card and removing one of your cards to deal with one of your opponent's cards. Um, Typically, in games, we do not like to do that. We want our cards to trade. I want to play one card to remove one of your cards. That is an even trade. I've traded 1 for 1. When I start trading 2 cards for one of your cards, now we get into the problem of I have lost some advantage. Particularly if you played limited, you may have had at one point in time to challenge a character, one of your opponent's characters, with at one or more of your characters to get that character off the table. And if you've had to, um, if you've lost both of your characters challenging that one character, um, that's a big negative for you. Um, your opponent has gained an advantage on you. Unfortunately, that's what this does. Now, at some point in the future, uh, we might have a villain that when it's banished, you get to draw a card. Um, and if that's the case, then maybe now you can justify, okay, I'll remove one off the table and play this to remove yours, and I draw a card. Now we're back to even. But as it currently sits, even as a song, I can't stand behind this currently. What did you call me? This is a simple increased strength increase for one of your damaged characters. Um, it's actually quite playable and limited because you usually have random damage on your characters. But other than that, not constructed playable currently. You can fly. So this is a song that I like. 2 cost inkable song. Chosen character gains evasive until the start of your next turn. So it lasts a full turn cycle. So not only can you quest with your character and you have evasive, your opponent won't be able to challenge it without an evasive character with this. I do consider this to be playable because it lets you quest maybe with one of the characters with 3 lore. Um, that completely takes it out of opponent's range. Like Cusco. Lastly, we have our items. So this is Dinner Bell. We had this very early on, and spoilers. So we're gonna pay 2 resources and exert to draw cards equal to the damage on chosen character of yours, and then you banish them. So again, this is Ruby, or yeah, this is Ruby card draw. Um, my current problem with this card is it's going to cost you a total of 6, 4 to put out, and then 2 more and exert. And then you have to banish the character because you're feeding them to Felicia. Um, or Felicity. Anyway, I'm not very high on this card. Originally, I thought this was pretty good, And it might be good in some situations, but this is definitely not a card I can just jam into any Ruby deck. And those are the ones I'm looking for to sort of fill in those spots. I like what we've seen from the shifted Queen, Floodborn Queen, to help with card draw. Um, this to me is not good enough as we currently stand. Peter Pan's Dagger. Um, your characters with evasive get +1 strength. It has it's 2 costs and uninkable. This is an interesting common. So if your deck is full of evasives, um, the question is why would you want to run this? Well, um, the matchup of evasives on evasives would mean your evasives are typically um, lower strength and average willpower. So you need higher strength to get rid of your opponent's evasives. If we ever get sideboards in this game, this would be an amazing card to have in the sideboard for a mirror match. We're both playing evasives. And we're each trying to race each other, but whoever removes the other person's evasives in play is going to get the advantage. And if I have this out and you challenge my guys, I'm hitting you back harder, and then it makes it easier for me to banish yours. Um, Now, you could run 4 of this into all evasive deck, and you would actually make your guys stronger, where you could challenge and maybe banish several of your opponent's characters. And in that light, it might be pretty good because it is a global effect. It will affect all of your characters on the board. Um, Maybe there's a budget version of this that wants this card. Currently, at least in all the evasive decks that I know of, currently I wouldn't include it, but I see the value of this. And lastly, Sword in the Stone. 1 cost, non inkable item. You exert and pay 2 resources, and chosen character gets +1 strength this turn for each 1 damage on them. This was actually a pretty good limited card, especially with characters with high willpowers. Eudora was absolutely huge. She's a 1/9. You're questing for 2. So if you don't have a way to just completely remove her from the board, and you have to challenge into her so many times, now you can hand her the sword and say, "Here." To me, it's a limited card at this point in time. But again, I could see a spot in the future where this could be a player in a deck that is definitely combat, or not combat, but challenge oriented, that's going to be taking a lot of damage. All right, guys, that is it for Ruby. What did you like? What did you not like? What do you disagree with me on? What do you agree with? If you like this kind of content, leave a like, subscribe, leave us a message, and I'll be checking back on the comments. We got 2 more colors to go. We have Sapphire and we have Steel. So until next time, no matter the game, there is no escape.